friends, it's Sharon Luska here from My Crafty Greetings, and I'm doing another Scrappy Tales video only because I so love these products. Oh my gosh. Anyways, this is the pop-up die mechanism for the 5x7 pop-up box, and I have decided to do something totally different today and possibly never done before. I'm hoping. I think it's a totally awesome thing, but I think I've got a little swelled head from doing this. So I'm just firming up the score marks on these pieces that I cut. The plates to my left there cut both pieces together. And then I cut myself an extra little piece, 1 1/4 by 1 1/2. And of course, when I lined it up here, it's a square. It's not 1 1/4 by 1 1/2. So I had to just lop off a little bit here to get it the right size. Now I'm folding this so that the widest length, 1 1/2 inches, is what we're gonna end up with. And it occurred to me after I had done this, you could actually just cut one of the single fold pieces again, because that was what I was trying to replicate the size of. So I'm adding ATG to the inside of just these two pieces, and I'm working that little notch to make sure that it's functioning well. And I'm going to take this little piece, I'm going to stick it in the one end just to lengthen this pull mechanism. And the reason we're doing that is this mechanism is usually made to pull 5 inches into a square box, and we're going to have it pull something a little bit longer than 5 inches, so it just needs a little bit of extra length added to it. And it did occur to me after I had done this that you actually could have just cut yourself an extra piece of the die cuts, the little smaller piece there, and it would have given you a tab that you could cut to any size that you need. So I've got a little fold line here, and it is just about a 1/2 inch here, and would be similar to the other tabs, and that's what you're going to use to glue it to our project today. You can see that it's similar in size to this piece, and this is how the mechanism works. You can see it just pulls two things together. So I've got myself a little bit of tumbled glass, and I've got a 5x7 Nina Solar White 80-pound piece of paper. You can use whatever you have in your stash and do it however you like, but this idea had just come to me and I thought, you know what, it would be a great deal of fun. Now, since we're using the pop-up die mechanism, we're going to need to have something to hide it a little bit, and I'm going to use this grass. It's great two-sided grass. It cuts grass both ways, and I got that from the Slimline Everyday Borders die, and it's like only 14 bucks. It's such a deal. Anyways, I tape the pieces back together, and then I just kind of slap on some grassy, I don't know, grassy blades or something like that. But anyways, regardless, while I'm doing my sneaky little make it grassy thing, I'm just going to tell you to thank you so much for everybody who has used my affiliate links. I so appreciate all the support. You guys have been just amazing, and I know Sabrina, being a new business owner, she's been working really hard too, and she also really appreciates the support that everybody's shown. So now this is the Spring Essentials die. This is that grass that I was so in love with. I'm flipping it over so that the grass looks like it's two different clumps together, and added some strokes to that. Now if you take this and you squish it together, it actually makes it really dimensional, which is so cool if you're into adding dimension to your cards. Now this fence here is also from the Everyday Borders die, and I'm going to be using that as well to build this little pop-up scene that we're doing. And that was just a light colored marker. Now on our 5x7 piece here, we're just going to be adding just one fold, and this fold is actually going to kind of sit out to the side, and it will give us a spot to be able to hang our sentiment. So the other thing that we need is something to attach our grass to and to attach our elements to. So the slim piece here is 7 inches by a 1/2 inch, and I've got a 3/8 inch fold on each end. And then I've got a wider piece here, and it is 5 7/8 inch by 1 inch. And I've got a 5/8 inch score here, just on the one end, and the other one is 3 1/4. I'll list them down below. So this is how this pop-up mechanism is going to get put on. We're going to go to the little end pieces here that have the fold lines, and you're going to add some really strong tape. I think this is red line tape, I'm not sure, but I know it's strong tape. Now you want to make sure that your little notches are hanging down, and we're going to line the one side up at the edge of the paper, and the other side up we're going to line the little bendy part up with the scored piece. So you'll see here, and I've got my fingers under the one mechanism so that it doesn't stick down by accident. So there's the fold, and we're lining it up on the score line. And you want to run this kind of parallel to the bottom of everything that we have here. Now, one of the things I didn't do is I wish that I had bent the paper, like kind of worked it so that it had a bit of a curl to it before I started, and I didn't, so oopsie, live and learn. But, and you'll also see I didn't bother ink blending the middle part of that paper, and you're gonna see why, because I've got some gorgeous images that we're gonna be adding to this to build it out and make it lots of fun. So here's our fatter piece that is going to support some of our images. And we're only going to take the folded end and glue it down to the right hand side of our card. And I put a little notch because it is actually wider than our sliding mechanism, just so that it would stay stuck down as it pulls on the paper. So this is the Rose Trellis stamp set. It is a huge set, and if you're a 5x7 card maker, this set is awesome. I love it, and it's got the most beautiful scripty happy birthday on it. So this is our Rose Trellis colored in, and you can see that BG53 I used as the little openings in the trellis so that it would match the background that we did. I also cut the little hangy parts off the edge of this, and now we're going to tape them together with some good strong tape, and I'm only going to put a few little dots of that red line tape or score tape, whatever you've got. We just want it to hold in that center part so that it bends and stands up when we start to have the card do what it's supposed to do. So you're just going to pop it in here, make sure that the bottoms of the trellises match up with the bottom of this card, and see how this all works together now. So we're going to add just a little tiny piece of ATG here. Now, hindsight being 2020, wish I hadn't have done that, because when I try and put my little fence here in, you're gonna see I start to struggle. I put a bunch of little dots on the bottoms of all those little pickets, and I'm trying to slide it in behind, and it was just not cooperating. So the easiest thing to do is just detach that and flip it forward and get everything lined up properly then. And then you can get it all glued down. And you'll see at this end part here, I had to leave two of the little pickets hanging out because that is glued down and has to stay glued down. So this fat piece of grass that we cut is going to be going along the bottom of the fence and going the full width of the card. And you want to make sure that it is glued down specifically right at this spot here. Now, I didn't attach it completely to this supportive piece because I didn't want it to be too bulky, and I'm just going to trim off the overhang. So you probably are going to have some overhang too. You just want to get your grass lined up appropriately with your little fence. So when you bend the card, that little supporting piece pushes out the grass, and we're going to try and add a little bend there. And then later on, I'll end up tacking the grass to that piece. But what I found is if you actually glued it down to that support piece or whatever it is, it actually got really bulky and didn't want to work. So the little skinny piece here though, we are going to add some ATG and we're going to start attaching it together. And the support piece here that we've cut and put the score lines in, it will pop out, but because it's not tucked in behind everything, it will have an easier time bending. So you can add, don't ATG the whole length of it, but just add a couple good runs of ATG or glue, whatever you're going to use, just to tack it down in place so it looks like this. Once you got that done, I would use some score tape for this particular piece and add a few little, or add a little square on either end because we want the rest of it to be mobile. And you're going to line it up with the bottom and the corner of your card, and then across to the bottom and the corner of your card. You can see where we're going with all this now. Isn't that cool? So making it all work though is dependent on this little tiny elastic. And this is why I said have your hooks face down. If they're facing down, you can get your fingers in there to slide the elastic over top. And that little folded piece, you just want to make sure it's tucked in between the elastic there, just like that. And now you can see, boing, boing, this is how everything pops up. Now I'm going to get that last piece stuck on. I didn't do it before we attached the elastic. I thought maybe it would be hard to maneuver the elastic with it stuck down, and found out later it doesn't matter. So just go ahead and stick it down whenever it's comfortable for you. But you can see now we have a constructed card that pops up, and we'll be able to add in pieces for the scenery. And this is what I was talking about taking our fatter support piece and tacking it down with some extra little glue bits. And I don't know why this piece just kept wanting to pop off on me. Maybe I didn't get as much ATG on it as I thought. So here I am with a couple little glue gobs. I call them glue boogers from my ATG. I just kind of rip off some tape. I have no need for glue dots because I have a whole machine that does it for me. And then anywhere else where it's not quite sticking down to the mechanism, go ahead and add in a little glue dot or some liquid glue, whatever you got. So I wanted to make this bench look like it was actually going across that grass. And it's perfect because it is drawn in dimension, and that allows it to stick to the front, but also to be tacked down to the back grass, which makes it look like it's going across the two. I colored in this beautiful little bundle of roses to set on the bench, and I also colored in the puppy dog here that was on that same stamp set, the trellis stamp set, and he's gonna sleep over here in the grass, and we're gonna put him underneath some daisies later. And I've got the two pieces that we colored of the grass from Spring Essentials die set. I love this grass, it is so awesome. And once I push these little openings down and collapse them, it bunches the grass up and it just makes it look like this full plume of grass. It's awesome. So you can see how much more narrow it is, but how much it sticks up. So that I've got stuck on with some really good strong tape, and we're actually going to attach that to the sliding mechanism, but I want you to be careful you don't glue it over top of that elastic. So just kind of finagle it under there so it's stuck on. Now this is from my favorite die set, the Assorted Leaves dies, and I'm just coloring in the stem so that the flowers look individual, and I'm just using a really light green, and then I'm going to put a bunch of dots of yellow in the center of all these white flowers just to give them some more interest. And I'm taking and just attaching them in a big clump or bunch. Nobody's going to see the stems, so don't worry about where the stems are sticking. Worry more about the shape of the flower bunch that you've made. Once that's all dried, I'm going to put some of that awesome sticky red tape on and fluff my little bunch up a bit here. And we're going to stick that to one of the supports as well. And we're actually going to tuck it behind the little puppy dog on this support, so it'll look like it's growing like out in a garden in front of that fence, but the puppy dog likes to lie underneath it. And you can see how this all goes up and down. It looks pretty cool. So you could stop there. I wanted to add the sentiment too. You can add any sentiment that you want. I got the circle sentiment die set from Sabrina, and of course there are some more leaves from the Assorted Leaves die set, which are so awesome. These you can take and you can just kind of wind them around each other, and they'll make this really strong kind of bushy vine looking thing. So, and I'm just going to glue the two stems together here. And I also have from the layering daisies die set, some daisies there on my desk. Now I'm adding one more bridge, and this is just a little 1/4 inch thick piece of paper, and I just folded it in half and then bent back a couple tabs, and I'm just going to sneak this in behind to add an extra spot to stick my stuff to. And when you stick it down, the only thing you want to make sure that you do is the piece that you're sticking it down to, do not put the fold directly across from the other fold. You want to kind of stagger them a bit, and that's what's going to make this pop up. So I'm just wiggling it around here so we can get it sorted. Now this is probably like the one kind of action that I did that overcomplicated this, so I apologize if you're going, okay, that was too far, now I'm losing the point, Sharon, but I did add it in. You can see the little bridge there, and you can see that that it's not lined up with the piece that it's attached to, and when it's not lined up with something, that's what sticks it out instead of it just following along. I'm adding some ATG to the bottom of this so that I'm ready, and I'm gluing on those little layering daisies to my little bush here. I'm actually going to glue one of the layering daisies to the leaves because if I stick it to the stem, it's going to be way too cluttered. We'll let that dry. I'm going to glue my sentiment together, and I have a little piece of fishing line here that I glued into a little piece of paper, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with that in a minute. So we're going to attach this little floral bunch to that bridge and just stick it on, and that way it'll hang out over the fence and look kind of cool. You can skip that, like I said, and I'm only going to add glue to the very side of this piece here, I've got some shimmer vellum that has some text on it. Nobody's going to be able to read it because it's actually wedding vellum. But once I cut the back area circle for this, I just added glue to that very edge, and that's why we're going to attach it to that folded piece so that it sticks out when we open and close the card. Now I glued some butterflies to my little fishing line piece, and that's going to allow them to look like they're flying through the air, and those are butterflies that are just from my stash. The one's not quite glued, but anyways, you can kind of see where we're going with this. Now I have one last piece from the Assorted Leaves die set, of course my favorite, so I've got a million of these die cuts flying around my desk all the time, and I added that in, and so this is what it looks like pushed flat, and then when you let it go, boom, it pops up flat. And that'll fit in a 5x7 envelope, and then it pops up. Would you give that to your mom or somebody special? I thought that was a totally cool card. Here are some views of it. It's really hard to show this, and I'm so wobbly, it's ridiculous. But I'll try and figure out how not to be wobbly on my next one. Thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't subscribed, I sure would appreciate it if you would. I don't want you to miss any of this fun, crazy stuff that I do. And please leave me a comment. It encourages me and keeps me going. Tons of hugs. Bye. Here's some more of my Scrappy Tales videos you might enjoy.